So this is the watch essentially that's credited with the waitlist for Rolex, the Rolex Daytona.
Oh man, I love this model.
The reason I brought that one in particular, that is an example of Rolex making a mistake.
Rate my watch.
Okay.
Is it real or fake? What are two elements that make a watch a growing asset?
You look at exclusivity. One thing that we notice with Rolex is color. Colored dials, colored bezels. Because they don't do a lot of it, it creates more demand. You can find a very traditional brand that does something weird. That's usually a good place to start as well.
Is the Rolex waiting list real?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously real because you are on it, but this is the problem with the Rolex waitlist game.
Welcome to Founders Playbook podcast, the ultimate guide for entrepreneurs to build their empires, increase profits, and become great leaders. I'm your host, Nelson, founder and CEO of Vibes Creative, Australia's leading video podcast agency. Let's get down to business. Welcome back to another episode of the show. Today's legendary guest is the self-confessed watch addict turned businessman. He's a luxury watch expert and the owner of The Watch Dealers, one of the largest watch dealerships in Australia. Please welcome the incredible Lewis Butterfield.
Thanks for that. That's a great intro. Thanks for having me here. I'm really excited. This is a really cool space you've got here. So I'm really excited to get into it today.
As I told you, I've been wanting to have a watch expert for a long time on the podcast, so I'm very looking forward to this conversation. Let's just dive into it.
Sure.
What's so special about luxury watches?
Dive into it with a big one. Wow. What's so special about luxury watches? So I think the thing with luxury watches for me, I mean, I can only really speak to me and to the people that I've dealt with and our customers, obviously. But for me, it's a watch can be more than just an accessory. It can be more than just a piece of clothing or an item of clothing. It can transcend generations. It can be something that a grandfather's passed to a father, which has gone to a son. And you know, I've got watches in my personal collection that have gone through a generation. We spoke, earlier. You've had the same sort of experience of watches coming down and being around. And I think, on a very simple level, there is that. It is that it's something that generations can share together. And I think that's a beautiful thing that we can experience. Aside from that, you have all these little different aspects of watches of the generational coming down and passing heirlooms. There is the business element of it as well. There is the financial elements that can be special about watches, and collectability is a whole nother realm. There are collectors who are just there for collectability. There are guys who find watches special just to collect a certain thing, a certain brand, a model, a make. Watches are special to me because they can be so many things, not just a thing that tells the time on your wrist or that looks cool. There is an element of what else do men have other than jewelry it's man jewelry, watches. It's on a simple level there. There's watches are special because of so many things, not just it's a watch. I mean, what does that watch mean to each person? That's what makes watches special to me. They are so many things, not just a watch.
Why do you think luxury watches are so popular amongst successful entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I think so. One of the things that I discuss with customers all the time is marking an occasion with a watch. And it kind of lends into that thing I said with its what else does a man have in the jewelry space, right? A man can wear glasses, a chain, maybe a bracelet, but really a watch. And most men out there, if they're going to wear one piece of jewelry that's not a wedding ring, it's a watch. It takes not very many men can pull off chains and bracelets and all the rest. It's great looking. I wish I could do it because I just not me. So a watch, right? And so something that we find with business owners specifically is marking an occasion. Mark the launch of your company with a watch. It doesn't have to be something ridiculous, obviously. There's stages to that. But we mark an occasion. We celebrate that. We celebrate a milestone with a watch. We celebrate an anniversary, a wedding. And so we find with successful people, luxury watches can often begin with marking that occasion. I bought a watch when we launched The Watch Dealers. I spoke with a brand that we're proudly an authorized dealer for now, Fears. Fears are the oldest watchmaker in England. And the story behind fears is fascinating. And we could spend an hour talking about fears and the history of that. And Nicholas there is just one of the most fascinating people in all of watches and possibly in business when you listen to this man talk and the passion he has about fears. And that resonated with me very early on. And so when we launched the watch dealers, I bought a Fears watch. I'm from England. His story of the family element and reviving his brand just hit a note with me. And I've marked my occasion with a Fears. I still have it. I wear it all the time. It wasn't the most expensive watch. It was certainly not cheap by any stretch, but it's just a very special watch to me. It's meant more to me than the item itself now. And so we find that successful people follow on that trend quite often. And then there is that element, as much as we sort of like to put ego aside, everyone has one. And there's something quite nice about wearing a luxury watch. It's something that not everyone can attain, not everyone can have. There is something nice about that, and it does feed an ego that oftentimes we're working hard to repress and swallow down because that can lead to some negativity. But there is something about that. Just wearing a Rolex, an AP, a Patek, just something beautiful and luxury and very hard to attain. There's something about that.
You put it so well, and you're so right. Those two things that you mentioned in there absolutely resonate totally with me, which is marking an occasion, as well as, of course, the status that it represents. To me, because of my background and what we do at Vibes Creative, it's more than I would say status. It's more about the marketing side of things and which conversations it can get started to have a really nice watch.
Absolutely.
And it at the beginning, it was almost like this theory, this hypothesis, right? From me watching and just in people with really nice luxury watches. And then I was like, I'm pretty sure when you do get one, this will open certain opportunities that otherwise maybe wouldn't have happened, right?
Totally.
Because also, and as you probably know, there are certain brands that everyone can recognize, just like Rolex, right? Almost anyone on the planet will know what Rolex is, or at least have heard of it, right?
Exactly.
But once you get into it, it's the people that truly know or that are at certain levels when it comes to business or branding or all these things where they will instantly recognize it.
Yeah.
Right? More than knowing like, oh, I know what Rolex is, not just being able to spot one.
You're right. It kind of opens up a club in a way.
Yes.
It opens the doors to a club, and you can see it from across the room. It's like, oh, that guy's wearing a Submariner, or that guy's wearing an AP. I'm going to talk to that guy.
Yes.
You might not know anything about him, but you know what? You both have an interest.
Yes.
There's something there. And so that can open a lot of doors, like you say. And within business and within that company space, you tend to, look, I'm a watch addict. I'm a watch nerd. It's a problem for me what I'm dealing with by just indulging in it. But whenever I see a nice watch and I'm walking with the family or whatnot, and I'm like, oh, that guy's got this on. Well, look at that. He's got this on. And my wife will roll her eyes to me and be like, yeah, of course you've noticed that. I'm like, but not everyone has that. Like, that's cool. That guy has this piece. And so, you can spark conversations. I've had many, many conversations with random people who've just walked up and said, hey, I like your watch. I'm like, great. And you start talking. And, for me, I'm as well as a watch addict, I'm a big golf addict. And the golf course is just the perfect place for that. Guys will, what do you do? What are you interested in? You got 3-4 hours with someone. Watches really are quite ubiquitous in those spaces. And, depending on where you are, those circles tend to be made up of quite successful people, which is, watches open an avenue into that, which is fantastic.
Absolutely. And as you said as well briefly, is just one of those things that when you see someone wearing a luxury watch, if you know what it is, you know how difficult can be to obtain.
Yeah, 100%.
So there's a level of respect that you have because also, most people can't have it.
No,
right?
and look, we're talking big numbers, and I really try and ground myself in this all the time because we get a little bit numb to it as watch dealers. You can become numb to it. I've got watches in my store that are, single pieces for $500,000. It's a wild amount of money. But there are guys out there that is just normal, right? And so we try and ground ourselves and say, well, whether you've spent $200 on a watch or you've spent $200,000 on a watch, you're part of the club. right? You're still in that sphere, and you can be, you're still a successful person because you've had that opportunity to buy something luxurious, something that is mechanical, something that will outlive you, and last that test of time. So opening that door to the club through a luxury watch is just a fantastic place to start.
Are luxury watches an asset?
Ooh, yes. Yes is the answer. The answer's quick and it's easy. And it's yes, of course they are. You've put a lot of money into them. They retain value. That conversation has changed a lot, though. So we saw, obviously, in 2019, 2020, with COVID happening and the luxury markets booming, when everyone thought it would all collapse, we saw that essentially everything became an asset, but everything became a growing asset, an asset that just kept growing, exponentially. And it was insane. And that lasted for years. That's not really the case anymore. And we've seen that in a lot of markets. And I'm sure you've had conversations similar to this where, the COVID boom, that's done. It's finished now. We're through that and everyone's coming back to normal. We're still in a great spot for watches. So don't get me wrong when I say this. I mean, we're still trading above retail prices on a lot of watches. We're still moving many, many, many pieces. The market is thriving. So yes, a watch is an asset. A luxury watch is an asset. Not every watch is a growing asset, though. So they're an asset in the same way a car is an asset, for the most part, right? There's still residual value in there. You can still trade in and out of it very quickly. If everything goes bad and you've got a Rolex on your wrist, you're going to be okay. You've got some liquid cash, right? But it's not like it was in 2019, 2020, 2021, where you could walk into a store and buy a $10,000 watch, 2 months later sell it to the same dealer for $12,000, buy it back for 13, and then 2 months later it's 15. And we did this with guys all the time. It was insane. That's done for the most part. There are some brands, some watches that we still have that experience with, but it's not as fervent as it used to be. But watches are very, very liquid, which is a fantastic thing. So even if you are going to, buy a watch and take a little hit, after 3 months because you want to move it too quickly, it's still very liquid and someone's going to buy it.
What are the things that make a luxury watch a growing asset?
So probably the number one is brand, right? So like we said, Rolex. Rolex is as ubiquitous as Coca-Cola. It's huge. It's a huge brand. Everyone in the world will know what Rolex is. So you start with the right brand. Rolex is always the best place to start if you're looking to have an asset that is going to maintain its value, if not grow in value. You start with Rolex. Unfortunately, with Rolex, the entry point is quite high. Especially if you want a watch that's going to grow in value and hold good value. I mean, you're 10,000 plus. That's your starting point, really, with Rolex, which is where it closes a lot of doors to people on that entry level. But if you are looking specifically for an asset that will grow in value or hold a substantial amount of its value easily, Rolex is just the safest bet in watches. That's partly to do with branding. And I think with that branding comes the demand and the fervor that we see in the marketplace of everyone wants a Rolex, everyone wants a Submariner, everyone wants a Daytona. Like it's insane, really, how much demand this brand has. There might be, let's say, 800,000 watches produced by Rolex in the year, but there's 4 million people on a wait list. I mean, good luck getting one. It's just not possible for most people. And the tricks they play and the games that Rolex play, they feed into that. It's similar in, other spaces with Hermes and the Birkin game. The Rolex game's just as bad, if not worse. So, the demand choked by that supply creates a great luxury asset. And Rolex is probably the king for that on a mass scale. And then you go into other large brands that are producing less volume, where I find a little bit more interest. People like Audemars Piguet, AP, with the Royal Oak. We've seen a bit of a slowdown on that, but we're still well above retail prices on pretty much everything they do. And then Patek Philippe. With Patek, you end up with double, triple, 5 times retails. They released a watch very, very recently as a new collection for the first time in 20 years they released. And the first one went up online yesterday, as time of recording. It's 5 times retail. That's what you had to pay to get this watch. That's an asset right there. If you can get one of those, you're making 5 times your money if you can get one of those out of the store. If you buy one at 5 times the retail, good odds for the next year or so, you're going to make a little money even. So it's supply and demand ultimately, but branding really pushes that.
Those two watches as well are so beautiful, APs and Patek Philippe.
Yeah, and we see a huge demand for them, a huge demand, especially AP. Patek is, I mean, when you go Rolex, price point is quite high, AP is higher again, and then Patek is just even more. So, the people who can, the audience that can get to them, the customer base is smaller, but the demand's super high.
So branding is then, if I'm correct, the biggest lever to what it means to the value of a watch. Is that correct?
I would say so. I mean, because the value is what is assigned to it in the market, right? It's like anything. What is the value of it? I mean, the value of the parts is nowhere near what you're actually purchasing at the end of it, but what you're buying into. You're buying into the brand, you're buying into the story, you're buying into that. So without that branding, I mean, there's a reason why Omega don't trade at the same levels as Rolex. Omega make watches that are just as good. An Omega Seamaster, their dive watch from the James Bond movies, that is every bit a watch as a Rolex Submariner that I'm wearing today. It's every bit the watch, but it's half the price. And you will lose money out of the store buying one. But if you buy one pre-owned, you buy it second-hand, your money's very safe in an Omega. Whereas in a Rolex, if you buy it, you can go up. That's branding. That's probably bad timing with them losing the Formula One contracting, but it's all over Formula One, one of the biggest exploded sports in the last few years thanks to their Netflix series. All eyeballs going onto Formula One. Rolex is all over that track. It's Wimbledon with tennis, it's Roger Federer, it's all those people, all those celebrities building the brand up, creating demand. And, that's where other brands just don't really get their foot in the door because Rolex dominate that space.
What are two more elements that make a watch a growing asset?
Two more elements that make it a growing asset. So I tend to break that up at that point then. I would say, we start looking at exclusivity and uniqueness, and then we can look into the catalogs of already good brands and what we can differentiate. So I would say if you're looking at something super limited, super high production value, brands like FP Journe, they're an independent watchmaker, very, very small, maybe 50 pieces, 100 pieces a year getting out to customers, like really, really small volumes, maybe, that kind of stuff. If you can get one of those at retail price, we saw prices where I think retail would have been around $30,000 and they're selling for 100 US. That kind of ridiculous scale on the market because they're so limited and so exclusive. So you look at exclusivity. Some of the pieces from Jacob and Co. The Godfather pieces and the oil rig pieces, the roulettes. Some of his art pieces that he does, they're so exclusive, they're so low production that can be a huge asset. We have some pieces in store that are, number one of 5. Only 5 in the world, we've got number 1. You bought that at retail, you're okay. It's going to take a long time to sell. Find that right person for it because it's a huge amount of money and it needs the right wrist. But even if you buy it at the price now, I mean, it's 1 of 5. Find another one. It doesn't exist. So you're pretty safe at that point. And then I would say if we look into, if we just delve into like the Rolex catalog, Rolex have a huge number of watches they produce, a huge different type and variation of model that they produce. Not all of them will appreciate at the same rate or have the same demand on the market, right? So a very small 28 millimeter stainless steel white dialed Rolex Datejust for a lady is not going to sell the same as a 40 millimeter white Daytona with ceramic bezel that everyone wants, right? It's different markets, but it's the same brand. So we look within and you say, well, what's creating it? One thing that we notice with Rolex and AP to a certain extent is color. Colored dials, colored bezels. Because they don't do a lot of it, it creates more demand. So we saw an explosion with the Rolex Hulk, the green Submariner, right? A lot of people who are into watches will know what the Hulk is. They didn't make many, and guys who've been around watches a long time will remember when no one wanted a Hulk. It was. Oh, why would you have a green Submariner? It's green.
I was just gonna say, I've never liked a green watch.
Right? Bizarre.
I couldn't understand what made that watch so popular.
It is so popular because it's so rare within the Rolex catalog that they do weird things. Okay, so the most recent example is the left-hand drive Sprite GMT they've done. They've put the crown on the other side of the watch. It's green and it's backwards. And so it's weird. And so everyone goes nuts for it because it's Rolex doing weird things. So if you can find a very traditional brand that does something weird, that's usually a good place to start as well.
That's a really good point. I never thought of it. Is the Rolex waiting list real?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously real because you are on it. Like, you get put on a list, kind of. Look, we have some insight on this. One of my staff members used to work for Rolex, so I'll be very careful. But essentially, there is a belief that you must spend to have the privilege to spend. That's kind of how it works. So yes, there's a wait list. You can walk into Rolex, you can say, hey, I would like a Submariner, and they'll say, yeah, great, you and 3 million other people. What's your name, what's your email, and maybe we'll call you. And as bad as it is, they're going to look at you and judge you on the spot, and it's down to some sales assistant that's standing there that goes, oh, well, maybe this person might give us some more money and we can get some more sales out of this guy. So there's a way to play the Rolex game, and there's a way to sort of skip that wait list. I mean, number one is befriend someone in the store, befriend the manager, befriend the owner. Like, that's kind of the way you beat it. You just become mates with the guy who has the decision. And we see that, right? But then if you go in and you're prepared to spend a little bit of money on things that perhaps you don't really want, that Rolex don't want and they need to get rid of, then yeah, you're going to jump ahead in that queue. I know lots of people who have bought solid gold pieces that have cost a lot of money, and they'll sell them on the pre-owned market and lose a bit. They'll take a bit of a hit on it, but ultimately they're going to get something out of it at the end, hopefully, that will mitigate that loss, if they do decide to sell it in the future. Or perhaps they just really, really want that watch and they don't mind waiting, or they don't mind spending the extra 20, 30,000 to get it, which to me I find bizarre, because you could literally buy the same exact watch, brand new or a year old or 2 years old for less than you've just lost doing that game. So I find that a bit weird, but it does happen. The Rolex waitlist exists, but probably not in a very true form. It's probably not as honest as they'd like you to believe.
Do you think as well that if, let's say, you befriend the staff or the manager, that they can get you any model quickly?
100%. 100%. So this is the problem with the Rolex waitlist game. And I know this firsthand. This is what happens. It is ultimately someone's decision who gets the watch, right? The watch comes into a Rolex store, an AP store, a Patek store. It comes in and it sits in a safe, and they've got people they can call. But that's a decision for one person to make, yeah? That's not just the store staff going, I've got a list, we're going down it. That's, hey, Joe Smith over here, he's a really good guy, we're going to give him the watch. But he's just mates with the owner. Like, that's true. That's kind of human nature, right? That's, at some degree, that's how a lot of business is done. It's not what you know, it's who you know. That's unavoidable. We may not like it, but kind of that's the game that you're playing, and that's life. So it does happen. There's no way around that. There's hundreds of Rolex stores in the world. Of course that happens somewhere. To say it happens everywhere would be, untrue, but it's not uncommon. I know of it happening.
What's the difference between buying a luxury watch straight from the authorized dealer compared to a pre-owned watch dealership?
Well, hopefully very little. It's kind of how we operate. We hopefully would like that to be very little. So let's say you buy a watch from Rolex, you walk in, you pay your money, you get your watch, maybe you get a little glass of champagne or a glass of water or whatever, but you get your experience in a boutique, and it's all very nice and pleasant, and that's fine, and you walk out and you've got your watch, and it's new, and it's yours, it's got its warranty. On that foundation level, there is no difference from buying from a reputable authorized dealer or a reputable grey market dealer like myself. When you come into our store, you're treated like you're a brand new customer to a boutique. You're part of our family. We're a family business, so you're part of the family when you come in. And so, yeah, you have your drink, you come down, we sit, we chat, we talk about everything, we get to know you, we'd like to know more about you, invitations to all of our events, all that stuff. We bring you in, you buy the watch, you get the warranty, you get all the aftercare service. We've got the servicing in-house. Like, you get the same experience with us as you would with Rolex, but hopefully without the big spend prior. But there shouldn't really be much difference. And ultimately, if you're buying from the right people, whether that's with us or with someone else that's reputable in their stores, it shouldn't really be a difference. You should be getting the same levels of service, if not better, because Rolex is a huge company, and ultimately they're probably not that mad if one or two customers aren't that happy. You know, with a smaller business and a family business, we really want to make sure you're happy and go that extra mile for you. So.
Absolutely, that's so true. As a smaller business, you should be wanting to give that extra mile, right? And if you already know that you're kind of in a little bit of a disadvantage, and this applies to any market, any business, right? Because there's always a bigger player. Of
course.
Your advantage is that you can do that extra mile. You can make the experience, even though it might not be exactly the same as the legit brand or the authorized dealer. You can give that extra mile that makes it feel, to an extent, more special, more intimate, and more relatable as well.
You have to do that. You have to do it. And it's one of the things that we really work hard with our guys in store of, you know, how we greet customers, how we treat them, how we speak to everyone, the responses you get, you know, drinks, you know, food if necessary, all that stuff. We bring it in, we get you in, we've, you know, got the couches in store, we sit down, we'll take our time. We really push that customer experience because it's important. And again, not being numb to the amount of money that someone is about to spend with you. This is not buying a coffee. Okay, this is a lot of money. And some of my favorite stories in the whole company have been from people waiting their whole lives. You know, they're 50, 60, 70 years old and they've always wanted a luxury watch, and then their wife buys it for them as a gift and they don't know. And that phone call you get back from the husband when he's real, I love that moment. And then you look back and you go, it was a $2,000 Tag Heuer, you know, which on the grand scheme of what we sell is towards the lower end. But to that person, it's the best thing ever. And I love that. And it's one of the reasons I push so hard to have the mid-tier branding or the sort of more affordable and accessible price point in the store and a huge selection of it, because those guys are so important. And they're the watch nerds. They're the ones who love it, you know, and I love that. So that experience has to be special for them.
Dude, I love that you're doing that, even as an example. And if you're a business owner, you totally need to get, especially when you start building a team, you need to get everyone on the same founder mode, right?
Yeah.
To really put your greeting, your energy into place, especially if you're one of the premium options in the market.
Yeah.
When it comes to video podcasting, we're absolutely one of the premium options. We have to be premium at everything we do. This is what I really drilled into my team, is not how we do just our podcast, it's how we do everything, all the nuances in between. Not sure if you noticed, but all the team members came to say hi.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. It was fantastic. And that's that's why you greet every single person that comes in. Someone takes the time to introduce themselves to you. You stand up and you introduce yourselves. And
Absolutely.
I love that. It's important. And it's something I noticed instantly when I came in here was everyone comes to say hello, everyone greets, and the reception is fantastic. So
absolutely, it's all the little things. So never underestimate, because also I'm telling you, from a person that specifically on this type of business, I've been on the other end. It's not really like, if you're gonna spend a lot of money on something, you want to make sure that everything is on point and that everything is supporting your decision, right? Especially if it's, you know, a luxury watch or a luxury podcast, whatever that is. You make sure that you give all the information and everything that person needs to know. Look, you know what? This is a lot of money, but I'm more than happy to spend it with you because you have done that extra level of care to everything that you're doing.
And sometimes I think as business owners, you can get in that mode of, you know, you always want to make money. You got to make money. You got to make money. I mean, we had literally this last couple of weeks, we had an incident where I think in the entire time we've been operating, we've had maybe 3 people who haven't been very satisfied and have wanted to return something or exchange something, and we always come to some arrangement for them. And I had an incident with a person who had purchased a brand new watch. It was one of our authorized dealer pieces, and it was on a leather strap. And so when you have a watch on a leather strap and you display it on a cushion, it bends around the cushion and you seal it, and it looks pretty, right? And this person's expectation when he purchased the watch from another state without seeing the watch was that the watch would have been laid flat for its entire life. Okay. Now, it's a miscommunication there. And this person was their first luxury watch they purchased, clearly, because that is just not the way it works all over the world, right? You've got to display the watch. You can't lay it flat because no one can see it. So when he got the watch, he wasn't very happy that the strap was bent. It was brand new, unworn, but the leather strap had been curved around a cushion. And I had a moment, I thought, well, I know what my thought on that is.
I know mine too.
Like, it's a leather strap, leather bends. You've just put it on your wrist, it's bent. Like, okay. And I had to take a step back from myself and say, it's $5,000. This person spent, $5,000, $6,000 on a watch. What did they expect? They expected perfection. What did we give them? Okay. So I said, right, great, no worries. I didn't have another one there because, we only had the one model. And it was a discontinued watch as well, which made it worse. So I couldn't really, in my head, I'm like, how do I even get another one? I was like, can I get him another strap? And I said to him, I'll get you another strap. He goes, oh, I'm not very happy. Like, it's kind of tainted. I was like, yeah, you're right. It has tainted it. So I spoke to the brand. And I said, look, I need another one. I'm going to have to buy another one off you. You're going to have to, I just need another one. Do what you have to do. Get me another one of these. And thankfully, the brand was very good and said, well, I can get you one, but it's not going to be cheap because they're finished. So we paid out of pocket. We got him another whole fresh watch. I said, make sure you never bend this strap. I want it, when it comes to me, it needs to be flat the whole way. I don't care what you do. This watch comes like it's just been built. And I could almost hear the guy in the background just like, are you like, what? How? I was like, I don't care. Make it work. And we lost $5,000-$6,000 on that deal total. But the watch has come. It's gone off, and he's happy now, right? Yeah, okay, whatever. It cost me a bit of money, but that guy's experience with the watch dealers, could have gone a really negative place over something that most watch dealers might have gone, what are you talking about? It's a leather strap. It's going to bend. You've put it over your wrist. It's bent. But to me, I was like, well, no. This guy expected something, reasonable or unreasonable. It doesn't matter. That's what he purchased, essentially. That's what he thought he was buying. We will deliver it. You have to be that way when you are not the giant in the industry like Rolex is. You have to be that way.
Absolutely, dude. I love everything you just explained. And that story puts it perfectly. And it's something that I was explaining to my managers as well, that the customer's perception of reality is reality.
Exactly.
It doesn't matter what we think it is, even if you're the expert on the other end and they completely wrong, totally delusional, not correct about one thing, it doesn't matter. You really have to help them either realize that, or you have to just find a way, ideally, to make them happy with what's going on.
And the option, we had is you either refund it and that person still has a bad taste in their mouth, or you take a loss and you go the extra mile and that person realizes that, oh, well, you know what, I'm still not happy, but they've done something that no one else would have done. Fair play. And if you can get to that point, because you're always going to be on a net negative there. In a situation like that, with a customer who maybe is acting unreasonably in a certain aspect, maybe they are, maybe they're not. Doesn't really matter, like you say. They're always going to have a negative view at a certain point. How much higher can you bring it? You're never going to turn it into a positive, but can we just bring it to a point that they're satisfied and everyone's okay? Because you don't want people thinking negatively about your business, especially, if you are a smaller business or you are, new into the game, like so many people would be. You've got to go that extra mile, and it's okay to take a loss here and there. It's totally fine. It's acceptable. You're going to take losses here and there. You've just got to manage it the right way.
Absolutely. And your reputation is everything, especially as the up and coming in your industry. That's everything that you have to protect and live to it at all cost. So I love what you did there. You're wearing a really nice Rolex today. Which model is it?
So this is a no-date Submariner. So it's a previous generation for the watch nerds that might be listening. It's a 114060. So it's a ceramic 40mm Submariner no-date. It's a piece that I've gone back and forward with in my collection multiple times. So I set myself a pretty staunch rule now of I maybe have 2 very high-end watches, maybe 3, and then a bunch of quirky stuff that I just like because I'm a watch nerd. At a Submariner no-date tends to come in and out constantly. I think I've owned this kind of watch 4 times in different, parts of my time. It's just something that I always come back to. They go everywhere, do anything. It's a Rolex. It's a sports model. It's safe money. and it kind of just goes with everything as well. So it's Rolex Submariner's a really, really good sort of go everywhere, do anything watch.
How quickly can you spot a fake watch?
It depends on the fake. That is the answer, really, right? So your Bali specials, instantly, essentially, across the room, you can see those because a lot of times they're just models that don't exist. Fake Breitlings are notorious for this. They'll get a Breitling and you go, that just doesn't exist. What you have there, they never made. So that's quite funny. But clones, the new clone stuff, that's scary. We go to some great lengths to fix that up and figure that out. We even have essentially we have a clone movement that a customer had in a watch and then gave to us and said, look, it's fake. I've realized it's fake. It's worth nothing. Can you have it so that you can teach the guys? I said, great, perfect. This is actually perfect. So we've got a clone movement from a relatively recent Rolex that we compare to, and they're pretty scary. Like they're close. Across the room, 90% of guys wouldn't have a clue on the clone stuff. I mean, you're still spending $1,000, $2,000 on these things. They're not cheap items, but they're also just fake. They're just not genuine, and it kind of speaks to the person as well. So you've got to be very careful with it. The stuff that comes out of the Chinese factories can be really, really, really close, at least aesthetically. The internal mechanisms and stuff, once you open it up and you know what you're looking for, there's some pretty obvious tells. There's some stuff they just can't do because the R&D is so expensive. It's just not worth it for them. And, when you get into the super limited things, we spoke about FP Journe and the really high end, it's just not really possible to copy that properly. They're all handmade and they're so finely crafted that what's the point? You're just not going to do it. You might as well build the watch at that point. But Rolex is an interesting one because the market's so big. If they can catch a few people, they can make a lot of money. So you got to be careful with Rolex.
That leads perfectly into the next section, which is rate my watch.
Okay.
So I'm going to give you this.
Sure.
And I'm going to ask you a couple questions. First one, is it real or fake?
So a couple of things that we do, like we test the winding on it. Yours is quite grindy, but Rolex aren't the best for that kind of stuff. But it's not too bad. And then we have to have a look at dimensions, things like the crown or the coronet on the clasp there. You put me on the spot. I've got to. It all looks decent. So this is where you get into that line of, if it's not real, it could be a very expensive clone and you have to open it up, because on fairly basic watches, design-wise, like Datejust and Submariners, like that's quite easy to copy. And without a loop, I didn't bring a loop with me to check that finer detail. At arm's length and this close, it's really hard. I would err on the fact that this is probably a real watch, but I'd like to open it up and double check it. So yeah, everything looks fine. But again, a lot of that stuff comes down to closer than my eye can look at, essentially. But all aesthetics on the outside looks fine.
What is the model, and can you describe it?
So Datejust 41, slate dial, fluted Jubilee, which is a good combination. The slate dial's a nice classic combination as well because it goes with everything. 41 millimeter, men's size. You've got the nice flip lock clasp, which gives you the adjustment, which is always a nice little touch. These are a great watch. I think these retail now about 18,000, something like that, in that realm. All day, every day, they're above retail at the moment, so they're a good piece.
What would be the market value of it?
Market value on something like this, 19 to 20, I would say, in that realm, depending on year. I think I've got a brand new. Usually, when we've got brand new colored dials, like the blues and things, they're in the 20 to 21,000. The more difficult pieces, like the green, they go a little higher, or different motif dials and things, they get a little higher. But the slate is still enough color variation from white and black that it trades quite high. 19 to 20, No problem at all.
Hey, real quick, if you're a founder, CEO, or business owner looking to build a personal brand, scale your business, and become a great leader, I've been curating all the best lessons, tactics, and strategies that I've learned from 7, 8, and 9-figure entrepreneurs and my own business journey into the ultimate playbook to help you accomplish just that. So if you're keen to get them straight into your inbox, sign up for our newsletter in the link down below. Now back to the episode. What would you say in terms of this specific watch, desirability of it?
The saleability?
Yes,
It's
and
super liquid.
how desirable?
Very. I mean, we've always got people looking for DJ 41s in the Jubilee bracelet with the fluted bezel. Always. It's, we can't hold them in stock. They fly. So you could give me 10 tomorrow and next week they're gone. Like they're very, very desirable watches. It's a beautiful piece, honestly. And being on the dressier side of Rolex, which is quite nice. So many people go, Rolex is sports watches. It's submariners and bezels and things, but the 41mm date just is a really nice dressier option that can still go everywhere, do everything. So yeah, they're super, super popular. Yeah.
What would you rate it from 1 to 10?
1 to 10.
10 being
Well,
absolute
that's
incredible
tough because I'm
watch.
weird and I like weird watches. So there's not many Rolexes for me are 10s. Like I'm a weird watch guy. I like quirky stuff. I think in terms of the market and sort of everyday, I mean, it's a 10 out of 10 for that stuff. It's, if you're wearing a Rolex, you're in good spaces. It's a great model. That could easily anyway say that's a 10 out of 10. In my personal collection, it's 7s, 8s. It's a great watch, For me, the date just is something I don't wear. For whatever reason, it just doesn't sing to my personal taste. I much prefer dive watches. I much prefer sports watches. And if I'm going for something dressy, I like something complicated or very quirky or very, very thin, something different. I like ultra thin watches. Things like, for similar money at retail, like the Bulgari Octo Finissimo, the super thin blue dial stainless steel bracelet. I love that watch. I think it's a beautiful piece. As a dressier option, I like that. Or if I'm going very dressy, I'll go complication calendars, things like that. That's more interesting to me visually.
I bought this watch about 2.5 months ago, 2.5, 3 months ago.
Nice.
And the reason why I bought it was exactly what we discussed previously, marking an occasion, a few different metrics that we hit for the business that it was kind of time to celebrate. I've been wanting one since I was a kid. I've been wanting a Rolex. It always felt like that one thing almost unattainable.
Yeah.
And that I always thought what kind of opportunities it could bring by just having it. I obviously just love watches in itself, but then proving that concept. And it has totally paid off itself already just because of the kind of people that you can meet through it. And again, the people who know instantly will say something about it. We will point out the watch, or we will, we'll bring it to the conversation. And instantly I knew, this validated the concept of it. I bought it in Canada actually. Yeah. So I pay more as well to what it will be. It cost me $24,000 in Canada for it. And the guy that I bought it from, an absolute legend. I was more than happy. I knew as well that I was paying more than what it would cost in Australia. But it was, having the family that I haven't seen in 8 years, everything just fitted so beautifully and perfect. And then I asked him, because I was going for something completely different. This was the interesting part of it, that after talking to him, I was going for a two-tone.
Interesting.
I really felt that I was very attracted to that type of looking watch, two-tone fluted steel, but gold, right?
Yeah.
And after talking to him, he just explained to me that it wasn't as valuable to have actually a two-tone. Is that correct?
They're less desirable on the market. I think it kind of comes down to the guys buying, and the people who are buying now are, in a similar generation to us, in their 30s, where it feels like your dad's watch. Feels like your granddad's watch, the two-tone, small, like it kind of has that hangover to it, I think. And I couldn't, I don't know how true that is, but that's kind of the feel I get from it when I talk to people. It helps with the 41mm, having it two-tone, like, because that just didn't exist back then. It's a pretty recent thing from Rolex, so that does help modern it up and freshen it up a little bit. So, but yeah, they're definitely not as desirable. You know, if we have two tones in, they still sell quite quickly. There's no issue with that. But for the price you pay for the gold two-tone, you then you're getting into other watches that compete with it. You know, you're getting into newer Submariners and GMTs and things. So there's more discussion on what else could I get at that point. When you're looking at a steel Datejust 41, it sort of has its own little price point that it occupies and that nothing else really comes into that meets the same requirement. So it's a nice little niche it's got there for itself. The two-tone blends into other ones, and that becomes an issue for it, I think.
You brought a few watches with you today. What do you have in there?
So I just brought a few because we were looking at, you know, the conversation being around what's a good purchase, what's a desirable purchase, what's going to, you know, hold value or perhaps go up. So I bought a selection to show you here. What we'll do, left to right or right to left. What do you think?
Left to right.
My right, your left?
Yes.
Okay. Perfect. So the first one I wanted to show you then, or that I will show you, is a Rolex, obviously. But we spoke briefly about color. So Rolex with color in the market. I'll give you this. This is a Rolex Submariner, and it's a previous generation, so it's an aluminium bezel. So we're, you know, going a few years old, but it's what's called a Kermit, or what the market would call a Kermit. So at around the time that the Hulk, just before the Hulk essentially came out and became super popular with the green dial, green bezel, they have the green bezel, black dial. So it flew under the radar a little more when the Hulk blew up. The Kermit got dragged along with it as green in the Rolex catalog. Green is one of the colors in Rolex's catalog that trades very well, does very well. That's why we see the Sprite do really well with the GMT. We see the Hulk do really well. The newer model of this that people call the Starbucks, that does really, really well as well with the green bezel. This is just the previous generation of it.
So the Kermit and the Starbucks are the same?
Same colorway, different generation of watch. So both Submariners, both green bezel, back dial, but just different generations. So the Starbucks is the 41 mil 126610, so the new reference, and that's the previous, before all that, in the 40 mil.
I've never seen this specific one.
There's not many of them out there, and you have to sort of be careful because a black dial, black bezel version of that watch will trade at around $13,000 to $14,000. That one will push up into the 18 to 19 to 20, right? So what people would do if they're a little bit nefarious is find a bezel, put it on a black one, and then sell you, oh, I just don't have the papers. So you got to be really careful. So when you're buying something like that, buy from the right person.
And the papers is what's going to determine everything.
It really can be. Box and papers is a weird thing in the watch industry. Obviously, you'd prefer to have it. It's not crucial. The authenticity of the piece is what matters, right? And that's what you're hoping the box and papers can give you. But ultimately, a box and some paperwork can be faked much easier than a watch can, right? Like, it's this weird thing that people have in their minds, like, I've got to have the box and papers because it could be fake. Well, it's a piece of paper, mate. Like, and especially in this generation, it was just a piece of paper. It wasn't the card with the holographic thing. It was none of that. It's just a piece of paper. So you got to be careful with that. But buy from the right people, ultimately, right? Whether that's us or it's from somebody else, I don't mind. It's the right person.
Absolutely.
With this piece, we know this is an authentic one. We've done the searching on it. We've done the requisite work to know this is an authentic piece. It's just a really cool one because you don't see them often. Not many people have Kermits. Yeah, it's a great watch. Something about it, right? It's got the color of the green's different to what they do now. It's different to the Hulk. It's a nice watch. So if you're looking at buying something that is different within a Rolex catalog for a luxury watch, a Kermit's a really good place to go if you want a bit of color, because the Hulk can blow out into the 30,000 mark and you're looking at a lot of money. So keeping under the 20K with color, it's a good spot to be. So I did bring that along.
I'd much rather that than the Hulk.
Than the Hulk? Yeah. And a lot of people that don't like the Hulk actually don't mind the Kermit because they don't mind the color.
Yeah.
But the Hulk's really loud.
It's too much.
It's
too
so
much
loud. Yeah, it's really big. The Hulk's really, really big in Asian markets for whatever reason. It's huge in the Asian market. We sell loads of Hulks to our Asian customers, and they love it. It's great. You know, it's whenever we're traveling overseas as well, you see loads of Hulks. They love it. So it's a super popular watch. All right, well, we're going to the middle now, yeah? So The middle is probably the biggest one I've got here for you today. And you'll probably know exactly what it is just from the bracelet alone, because that's kind of the calling card of this watch. It's the AP Royal Oak.
Man, this watch is beautiful.
Yeah, that's one that exploded in popularity. It's been around a very, very long time. Since the 70s, that watch design has been around. And in the last 10 to 15 years, it has blown up. Yeah, but yeah, feel free to take it off, play with it. It's
absolutely
it's a
one
stunning
of
watch,
the
right?
most popular pieces right now, from what
for
I can
sure.
tell in the markets. I've seen that the blue seems like is the most popular. Is that correct?
Yeah, usually blue dials. So blue dials across pretty much every brand are usually the popular ones. That's the black that we've got there, which is usually second in the list, and then the white will usually travel after that. That's a brand new piece. It's a stunning watch. It's again, the history of the Royal Oak is fascinating. It comes from one man, Gerald Genta. He's a watch designer in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. Probably responsible for more designs in the watch industry today than anyone in all of history. He's the most prolific watch designer there is. Started as a jewelry designer, and he essentially drew this watch up for AP, for Audemars Piguet, as a luxury steel sports watch in a time that did not exist. The Rolex catalog in the 70s was an everyday watch. It was a workman's watch. It was, everyone could aspire to a Rolex and reasonably achieve it. A Submariner was achievable for most people. That's not quite the case anymore, and they've gone very luxury. Back then, that wasn't really the case. AP were always a luxury brand and therefore wanted a luxury stainless steel watch, and Gerald Genta designed the Royal Oak for them. Off the back of that, a few years later, he's meeting with the family that owns Patek Philippe, and they said, we want one too. And so he designs the Nautilus, which is the other huge watch. We have one in store. I didn't bring it with us today. And I probably should have, actually, but I didn't think about it. And the Nautilus and the AP are the two kings of the stainless steel integrated bracelet sports watch category. They are the kings. And they come from one man.
Interesting. So they come from the same person.
Same guy.
Those
And a
two
couple of years
models.
apart in the 70s, yeah.
No way. I love the design in the back. This is one of the things that I really like about it. I've seen it. I'm like, that looks so cool, and kind of like, you don't know it's there unless you know
it's
the
a treat
watch.
for the owner, right?
Yes.
Yeah. The
yes.
display casebacks, something I really like about watches and something that draws me to them. If I'm buying a watch, I always quite like having a display caseback. It's something that Rolex don't do. They've only just started it with their newest Daytona in platinum. They've released their first sports watch with a display caseback. They did some Cellini range in their dress watches recently, or a few years ago, that had them, but no one really wanted them. And so if you want a nice sports watch with a great display caseback, the AP.
This watch, I love the look of it. It just feels as well that you can use it for any occasion.
Yeah, these are a fantastic watch for every day, but I mean the price point on these is high. I mean, this is a watch.
What's the price point for that one?
So this one will be in the 70s. So they're up there. You're going to be 74, 73,000 for something like this. They're really expensive. You can pick up Royal Oaks, older ones in the 50s, 40s, in full size 41 mils. You can pick up vintage sort of 33 ladies ones for maybe 20s, but I mean they're old and they show their age. The modern AP with the modern bracelet, the construction's so much better and they hold themselves better. The older ones tend to flop around a lot and they get quite loose. This is a watch that if you're wearing this, you're kind of making a statement in itself that you've made it somewhere, you've done something. This is very, very hard to attain, and it's an aspirational piece, for most people. So if you're wearing this, feel good about yourself because you've done something.
Yeah.
You've done something right. And then from there, we can have a look. The last one I brought with me today is another pretty iconic watch in the Rolex catalog because, Rolex being the king of the marketing, is the Rolex Daytona.
Oh, man, I love this model. Yes.
So it's another one that, everyone wants out of Rolex, the Daytona. The waitlist. This is the watch essentially that's credited with the waitlist for Rolex, the Daytona. Most Rolexes were attainable, within the store. You might have to wait a month for it to come in or whatnot, but you could walk in and get one. And then the Daytona got its update, and that begins the Rolex craze, the Rolex waitlist, and then everything trickles on from there. The Rolex Daytona is the reason that we have the waitlist as we know it.
It's such an iconic watch and is beautiful, dude. Would you say the Panda is still the most popular version of it?
100%. The Panda is the one everyone wants. So this one here is again, a previous generation with a steel bezel. I actually really like this because I think it flies under the radar a bit more. We've got some of the ceramic bezels and whatnot as well, but the steel bezel is a piece that you can purchase at a reasonable price. Yeah. The reason I brought that one in particular, I'm curious to know if you'll understand why. Why that exact model?
Why this one? I wouldn't know.
So that is an example of Rolex making a mistake, that watch. And so when Rolex make a mistake, the price goes up. So that's what's called an APH dial. And if in the watch world, an APH dial, there's on the watch there underneath Rolex, it says Cosmograph, yeah? And the spacing between the A, the P, and the H in Cosmograph is just slightly too large. Slightly, very, very slightly. You probably can't see it in your eye. It's that kind of silliness. But people noticed it. And they took it into Rolex, and Rolex went, oh, we made a mistake. Let's change those dials. And they took them out. So not many survive, right? So you find an APH dial, Rolex made a mistake, price goes up. So that's a more expensive
You
Daytona.
know why I find that so funny is because the guy that sold me this Rolex was wearing a Panda.
Oh, yep.
And we just started talking about that watch, and he said, oh, actually, this one is a bit more valuable. And he explained the same
APH
thing, and he
dial.
showed me the thing.
Yeah.
I can't see it right now because
It's really hard to
currently
see.
cover. But that's so funny.
It's one of those
such a
weird
nice
things.
watch.
There's a couple of examples of it, and we've got a couple in store. We've got some older Submariners that they call spider dials because the dial cracks like a spider web. Just because the materials and over time, the sun hitting it, they're 70s, 80s watches, it cracks. Rolex see that as a mistake. And so when it comes in for service, they change the dial. Collectors see that as, you made a mistake, I want this. And the price goes up.
Yeah.
One of the more famous ones recently that came out from YouTube actually was an Air King that was supposed to have the numerals 3, 6, and 9 on it. And it had 2 9s or 3 9s. I actually can't remember. It didn't have the right number, 3, 6, and 9. It had like all 9s. And no one picked it up. So out of the factory, it goes through all the QC, everything. No one picks it up. And they sell it to someone and he goes, hang on. That's weird.
Yeah.
It's fully authentic. Rolex are begging him to get it back in. He's like, nah, it's the one. It's the only one in the world. Right, if that thing ever sells, it'll go through the roof. Because Rolex made a mistake, and that kind of mistake is just dumb. Like
That's so interesting.
How does no one pick
will
that
make
up?
a watch way more valuable.
Way more valuable. There's so many examples of it, and typically it's the Rolex catalog, because again, branding and Rolex are so popular that if anyone can find an example of Rolex making a mistake out of the factory, prices go up.
Which social media influencer has the best luxury watch collection that you have seen?
I'm bad at this one because I stay away from them. I spent a few years dealing with most of the big guys or knowing of and trading with collections. Like I think Nico's an interesting guy. Nico Leonard's a really interesting guy. He's got a cool collection, super interesting collection and high end. Another guy that I really like on a personal level is Roman Schaaf. Roman's a great guy. He's a really good dealer, and he's got a cool collection. But in the social media space as well, I mean, I used to watch a lot of Adrian Barker. It used to be Bark and Jack, and then I think he went to Adrian Barker. I liked his photography and I liked his video style. He's just got a really good way about him. He's a huge Rolex fanboy, which I'm not, but he has some really nice watches and he really likes Omegas and things, and I have a bit of a soft spot for Omega, so I think Adrian's got a cool collection because he doesn't go silly either. He probably could now. He's quite popular, but he tends to ground himself in the watches quite nicely. He doesn't go out and just buy ridiculous tourbillons and $100,000 watches because he can. He likes what he likes, and he's quite true to that, and I appreciate that.
By the way, I didn't ask you, what's the price of that Daytona that you have there?
So that Daytona, we're looking at around the 30,000 mark on that. Without the APH dial, they're in the mid-20s, but with that error on the dial, it's around the $30,000 mark.
Which is the best luxury starter watch for an entrepreneur?
The one you love. That's truly the one that you love. What can you afford, and what speaks to you? Now that can be so many things because everyone's view of what's luxury is going to change, right? The guy who's pulling in $10 million a year, his idea of luxury is very different to a guy doing 50,000 a year. That's just a totally different sphere. And so you can't say, this is the one you should have, right? This is the entry level. It's not. It's what speaks to you. Now, that could be a Seiko. There's no reason to say, essentially, that a Seiko is not a luxury watch. It is serviceable. It's mechanical. It's tradable. Why is that not a luxury watch? It might not be as luxury as other pieces, but it's still a luxury purchase. It's a disposable purchase that you're throwing disposable income into, right? You don't need it. You don't need a watch in today's day and age, but you get one because it means something. So that's a luxury purchase as far as I'm concerned. Ultimately, mate, it is what speaks to you, what can you afford, buy the one you love, especially if it's your first. It's different when you're 2-3 pieces down and we're looking at investing and we're looking at, putting that money somewhere very safe and trying to grow it. That's different. If you're marking the occasion or you're jumping into watches the first time, buy the thing you love first. You can't be wrong with that.
Which is the most overrated watch brand?
It's Rolex, right? I mean, they are the most overrated because everyone knows them, everyone loves them, everyone's going after them. It has to be Rolex. Doesn't mean they're bad, though. There's a distinguishing factor there that, yes, they can be at once overrated and excellent at the same time, right? Because that scale slides. It had to be Rolex. I mean, what you're purchasing in terms of monetary value is not what you're getting in the physical item. Yeah, like the Rolex Submariner is not $14,000 worth of material out of retail. That's just not what it is. The R&D. Yeah, because the same thing, or even slightly better, can be purchased for 6 or 7 with Omega, right? But branding comes into that, obviously. But in terms of a physical in a vacuum item, it's just not. But it doesn't mean they're not great. It's a fine line they tread. They are overrated, but they're still fantastic. So it's a weird one.
Which is the most underrated watch brand?
Underrated. So I still, like, I say Omega a lot because I think they do fantastic things. They make amazing watches. They probably don't get the love they deserve. They're still very popular, and many people know who Omega are. They're a pretty big brand. I mean, they put a watch on. The first watch ever worn on the moon was with Omega. They beat out Rolex in that race and a bunch of other brands. So they're fantastic. The other one is JLC, Jaeger LeCoultre. Very, very much lesser known brand, but colloquially known as the watchmaker's watchmaker. They are excellent quality, the best quality for the price point you can get, but the market just doesn't respond to them as well. Their most famous piece is called the Reverso. It's a dress watch, a rectangular piece that actually slides and flips over and can have 2 different watches on both sides. Beautiful watch. And some of their dive watches are insane. We have a dive watch in store from JLC. It's part of a US Navy SEALs collaboration. It's a huge, big thing. You'd have to be a SEAL to wear this thing. But I mean, if you broke that, you've got bigger issues. Your arm's probably in a cast. Like, the thing is rugged, so well built, and it's a luxury watch. The mechanics inside it are astounding and so fine. But JLC are really underrated in the marketplace.
Which is the most expensive watch you have ever sold?
Ever sold? I don't actually know. It's not something that I would track. That's weird, right? That seems weird. It's not something I track as such. Like, we've had sales in the hundreds of thousands, many of them. I actually don't know which one would have been higher, but I don't know, it's not quite as important to me, I think. It's not something that I track because I don't really care about the price of the item that I'm selling as such. It's the customer's value of that item is more important to me. So I don't know is the answer. We've had multiple watches in the hundreds of thousands. I mean, 200,000-300,000, I'd say, is in that realm.
Which model would that be?
We've had some Pateks in that realm, some Vacherons. It's usually Patek, they approach that point. And then the problem as well is that the market fluctuates. So what may have been 250,000 in 2020 is now 180. So like, that is different. So, some solid gold Daytonas from Rolex, they can be very, very expensive at certain points. The John Mayer green dial, I mean, that was hugely popular. They're coming down quite nicely, which is good for collectors. But their peak was enormous. The 5711, the Patek Nautilus, that peak was huge, coming down nicely to a reasonable place for that watch. Still high, but reasonable. So, yeah, we've had a few, in the hundreds.
Which has been the hardest watch you have ever found for a customer?
Hardest to find. Look, we've had times where we haven't been able to find a watch. That's the truth of it, right? Like sometimes guys will want something very quirky, and it's actually easier for me to find you a brand new, unworn Rolex, Daytona Sprite, anything like that from their catalog than it is for me to find you a very specific Breitling for this model in this dial color, that was discontinued 5 years ago and only ran for 3. Like that's hard to find. It may not have the monetary value associated with it, but it's really hard to find. So we've had a couple like that where guys have said, hey, I want this Breitling for Bentley, this specific one, has to be this dial color. And you're like, I just can't. Like, it was made for 2 years and it's a Breitling no one bought out at retail. What am I supposed to do with that? Like, we've had that. But things that we've dug hard for have been, limited edition Vacherons, limited Pateks, things like that. We found them, we've got them. It's a weird one because once you have the network around you like we do, pretty much everything's quite easy to find. It's just price. So it's a weird one. Like people would think, oh, that's such a hard watch to find. It's like, it's usually just a phone call and I can get it. It's just, are you willing to pay it? That's the difference, right? Like I can get you a Tiffany Nautilus tomorrow. You want to pay a few $1 million? Let's do it. But who's paying it, right? So it's not hard. It's just price.
This section is called This or That.
Okay.
So you just have to choose one or the other.
Oh, this is going to hurt, isn't it?
Tea or coffee?
Oh, coffee.
Sushi or steak?
Steak.
Expert or jack of all trades?
Expert.
Product or service business?
Service. CEO
or founder?
Founder?
Instagram or TikTok?
I want to say Instagram, but I spend way too much time on TikTok, so it's probably TikTok.
TikTok or YouTube?
Depends on the content. Long form's obviously YouTube, but TikTok is just easy, so yeah, probably TikTok.
Photos or videos?
Videos.
Short form or long form video content?
Again, long form. I actually really like. I watch a lot of like long form golf, so yeah, long form.
Newsletters or podcasting?
Podcast.
Organic or paid marketing?
Organic.
Building a talent or hiring a talent?
Ooh, build people around you, build what you need out of someone and that you'll never be disappointed.
A talent at a high price tag or multiple cheap C talent?
Pay the price, get the right guy.
Datejust or Submariner?
Submariner.
Submariner or Day-Date?
Ooh, Day-Date.
Day-Date or GMT?
Day-Date.
Day-Date or Daytona?
For me, Day-Date.
Side note,
yeah.
That green ombre.
Yeah.
Dude, when I saw that watch, I'm like...
We've sold a few of those.
Have you?
Yeah, we've sold a few and they're just stunning.
How much are they for?
They're varied. I couldn't tell you what today, but I mean, we've sold them as high as, 112. We've sold them at 80, depending on the market. So the budget yourself about 80,000. They're a beautiful watch.
Oh, I love that watch.
But the one
that instantly went into my wish list.
The one that's better is the Eisenkeisel. The Eisenkeisel dial on the Day-Date is in a rose gold is just unbelievable. We had one in store with a factory diamond bezel, and every day I went in, I was like, oh, I want that watch so badly. But that was like $110,000. I was like, no. Like, no, I'm not doing it. But yeah, I want to be married. I like being married.
Two-tone or stainless steel?
Stainless.
Fluted or smooth bezel?
Fluted.
Pepsi or Batgirl?
Batgirl.
Batgirl or Hulk?
Batgirl.
Batgirl or Zombie?
Batgirl.
Batgirl or Sprite?
Batgirl.
Batgirl or Coke?
Coke.
Coke or root beer?
Root beer.
Root beer or Panda?
Root beer. Yeah.
Rolex or Patek Philippe?
Patek's better. Yeah, Patek.
Patek Philippe or Cartier?
Patek. Yeah.
Patek Philippe or Omega?
Patek. It's Patek.
Patek Philippe or Audemars Piguet?
I say Patek because they tend to wear better on me. I'm smaller.
Patek or Richard Mille?
Oh, Patek.
Watch collection or property investing?
Or be both? No, I love watches, man. I'm a watch addict. Give me watches.
Watch collection or shares?
Watches. It's more fun.
Commercial or residential property?
Commercial's probably residential. It's just makes it easier.
Watch collection or crypto?
Oh, watches.
Watch collection or acquiring businesses?
Ooh. I would say, again, I know watches, so watches. Acquiring business is a weird one because I tend to think that you get found out eventually if you don't know what you're doing. And if you're just acquiring businesses that you don't know what you're doing with, you better have the right team around you. So I feel like you just get found out eventually.
Building a business or buying a business?
Build.
Passion 6-figure business or stressful 8-figure business?
I kind of have both. I kind of have a stressful 8-figure, but let's just go passion. Passion. I mean, the whole reason I'm here is passion. So yeah, passion.
Sales or marketing?
I'm a salesman. It's what I do. We sell. It's sales. Marketing's really important, but yeah, get the sales.
Sales or brand?
Ooh, sales. I mean, sales solves everything, right? So I think I heard that on your podcast. Someone said that sales solves all the problems. It's true. It does. If you got a problem, sell more. It goes away.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sales is the oxygen
king,
of,
right?
of a business. What are 3 things that you will tell your 20-year-old self about building a successful business?
Oh my gosh. If I told myself at 20, I'd say, do this earlier. Do it earlier if you can. And just work. Do the work. Put the work in. It's really hard. And so, yeah, like having a business that you're passionate about is great. And I love my business and I love what I do and the people. It's really hard. And it's the stuff that when you run a business, it's actually the stuff you didn't get into business to do that becomes the problems and becomes the hard things. It's the taxes, it's the wages, it's the just running of a business. Something breaks on a website. You're like, well, I'm not a web developer. I got to go to it. Like that kind of stuff just eats into your time all the time. And I've noticed my role within the company change drastically over the years. From being the front sell, I'm doing everything. I'm moving $250,000 to $500,000 worth of watches every month myself, to having to step back, let the team do their thing, build the team around you to say, I now need to look after the company and the vessel that becomes to push. And then one thing I find the most stressful is being responsible for other people's livelihoods. It stresses me out enormously. And I never take that for granted because I never want to put someone in a position where they can't succeed and then therefore are struggling. So that's a huge stressor as a business owner. Probably not a bad thing to be stressed about if you reflect on it. I try and reflect on it quite often, is that if you're worried about your effect on the people that work under you or with you, that's probably a good thing. And so, yeah, it's all those things that business creates stress just from being a business, the vessel of a business. And usually it gets away from why you started. So I'd say to my younger self, like, start earlier, do it, love what you're doing and push and do the work, but don't then be afraid of the hardship that comes with that as well, because it does come and it's the stress that comes with it. It's all worth it, ultimately. I mean, I've been in salaried jobs, I've been in government jobs, I've done all that. It's worth doing your own thing. It's worth being, a business person. It's not easy, but it's worth it. Just do the work.
Absolutely. And that last phrase, just do the work, man. If you really want to do it, just know it's going to be 10 times harder than what you could ever imagine. But if you actually decide to do it, just do the fucking work.
Do the work. It starts off roses. It does. Like, if you have a good idea and you have a good business, you get that first year under you. It's all great. It's all fun. And then you want to grow a little. That's the problem. It's that like next step you take up that you actually take a step back. Second, you got to bring people in. You need to step back, make sure you can do that. Because a lot of people can't, and a lot of people will run solo businesses really successfully, and they're the business, right? But that business can't go anywhere. It can't sell to someone down the line. No one can take over it from you. No one can, you can't walk away from that because you are the business. You've got to separate a little bit whilst maintaining your original vision and your original purpose for being there.
Absolutely. Yeah. What's the worst piece of advice you have ever received?
Worst piece of advice I ever received? Gosh. You know what? I've been really lucky. I'll say this. My journey into business is different from probably most people that you've read. I was a government employee for a long time and sort of got lucky through tragedy and had an opportunity to do something that I cared about. And I got very lucky with the people that came around the business early on, external to the business, obviously, that came in with advice. They were all very successful and had good advice, and a lot of it was just around do the work. So I never really had a chance to experience that bad advice and take it on and use it and then fail with it. So we got really lucky, and I'm pretty happy with that.
If you have to put it to, let's say, a common phrase or something that you completely disagree with.
Oh, something I disagree with. I kind of disagree with the whole like time is money thing. Like, I mean, it's just a bit of a weird one given that I sell timepieces, but it's yeah, I get what you're trying to say. Like my time is valuable. Like I get that, but realistically, one thing I've learned in a sales-oriented business, it takes as much time to sell one watch to one guy as 10 watches to 10 guys. If it's the big, like I can sell you $100,000 watch, right? That customer takes me as long to find as it does to find a $1,000 watch customer. So like it takes me no more time and it gives me no more money, it costs me no more money. So I kind of disagree with that aspect of time is money and therefore do the work and you're doing the same amount anyway. So you shouldn't be worried about, well, what am I going to do for this hour? What am I going to do for that? I really have an issue with a recent trend of that, like hard times make hard men kind of like alpha male, really, I just go away. Just be a person and do the work and just enjoy life a bit more. Stop trying to create hardship for yourself. And I really don't like that kind of mentality. And I think that time is money kind of blends into that. Yeah.
What's the best piece of advice you have ever received?
One person sticks in my mind. He said to me, you're going to fail. You're going to take losses. And if you have a victim's mentality, you will be a victim. And so don't walk around life thinking that you're a victim, thinking that things are happening to you. We probably all know people like this, where it's like, oh, woe is me. They're always doing this to me, and it's always happening to me. It's like, maybe not. Maybe you just have the wrong perspective on it, and things are going to get difficult. But again, just get through it. If you have the right stuff and you have the right attitude and you know what you're doing, you'll come through it. We've had hard moments and things have gone wrong in certain times and things get difficult, but you just push. And if you're doing the right thing in the right way, you'll push through it. So yeah, that person, and he's still around with me in the background, and sort of I talk to him quite often about things like this. And yeah, he's had businesses that have failed, and he's been ripped off here and there. He's had things stolen from him from companies, and he had tragedies happen within business. But he just puts the next foot in front of the next foot in front of the next foot, and you just keep going through it, because ultimately it's better if you just move forward. Stop being a victim, just go. And that's something that sticks with me.
Lewis, it has been a pleasure having you on the show. Where can people find you, work with you, get a watch with you?
Yeah, so like I say, we own the watch dealers. We're in Vice Lakes on the Gold Coast, but we operate Australia-wide. You can find us on Instagram at The Watch Dealers AU. Don't forget the S, Dealers AU. And you can find us on Facebook at the same. You can follow me personally at GC Watch Guy on Instagram. So if you want to say hello to me there, that's fine too.
Awesome. The links will be down below as usual. If you enjoy the show, All I ask from you is subscribe to the podcast, comment, let us know what you thought about the episode so we can get more legends like Lewis here today. You can follow us across all major social media platforms. The links will be down below. We'll see you on the next episode. Good vibes to everyone. Hey legends, my goal with Founders Playbook is to help 1 million entrepreneurs build successful personal brands and businesses so that they can increase their impact and profits. You can support the mission by simply sharing the podcast with other founders and entrepreneurs. Leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and follow us on social media. Let's get to work.